It started with a sound most people will never hear in their lifetime. A tone. A single, flat, mechanical tone cutting through every radio frequency, every television broadcast, every government terminal across 3 continents, simultaneously. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because that sound only plays when the world is about to end. Imagine waking up at 3 in the morning. Your phone is screaming. Not a call. Not a text. An emergency alert, the kind that turns your screen blood red. And the message reads 4 words that no generation since the Cold War ever thought they'd actually see. Nuclear threat. Seek shelter immediately. This isn't a movie. This isn't a drill. This is the moment historians will one day call the first nuclear alert of World War III. Before we go any further, if you're new here, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because this channel covers the stories the mainstream won't touch, the events that reshape the entire world, and today's story? It's one of the most terrifying things I've ever researched. You don't want to miss what comes next. Now let's get into it. The year is 2025. Tensions between global superpowers have been building for over a decade. Quietly, steadily, like pressure behind a dam nobody was watching closely enough. Russia and NATO have been locked in a slow-motion confrontation over Eastern Europe. China has been circling Taiwan like it's rehearsing for something. And in the Middle East, proxy wars have been bleeding into each other until nobody could tell where one conflict ended and another began. The world didn't snap. Cracked, slowly, then all at once. On a Tuesday morning, in a command bunker somewhere outside of Moscow, a sensor picked up something. Satellite data. Missile trajectory calculations. A heat signature rising from a location it should never come from. The officer on duty had been trained for this exact moment his entire career. He had practiced the protocol hundreds of times. He knew what the procedure was. He knew what pressing that alert button meant. He pressed it anyway. Within 90 seconds, 3 separate nuclear-armed nations had received the signal. Within 4 minutes, emergency broadcasts interrupted programming in 17 countries. Within 6 minutes, the President of the United States was being pulled out of a private dinner in Washington, D.C. His jacket still in his hand, his face completely white. What nobody knew yet, what the world wouldn't find out until much later, was whether the signal was real. Because here's the thing about nuclear warfare that nobody talks about openly. The most dangerous moment isn't the launch. It isn't the impact. It's the alert. It's those first 7 to 10 minutes where military commanders have to make a decision with incomplete information, under the most extreme psychological pressure a human being can experience, knowing that if they wait too long, it's already over. That window, that terrifying, paper-thin window between civilization and catastrophe, that's where this story lives. In the United Kingdom, the Cobra Emergency Committee was convened within minutes. Senior ministers were pulled from their homes, from their beds, from their families. In Australia, defense officials scrambled to their encrypted communication lines, trying to separate fact from noise in real time. Ordinary people across the US were already filming the alert screens on their phones and uploading them to social media before their governments had even confirmed what was happening. The internet didn't wait for the truth. It never does. And in those early minutes, something else was happening. Something quieter, something most people missed entirely. In several major cities, certain government personnel were being moved. Not publicly, not with any announcement, just moved. That detail alone should tell you everything about how seriously this was being taken behind closed doors. While the public was glued to their phones, hitting refresh every 30 seconds, hoping someone, anyone, with authority would come on screen and say, "It's fine, stand down, go back to your lives." The people actually inside those decision rooms were dealing with something far more complicated than a simple yes or no, because the data was contradictory. One satellite was showing a confirmed launch trajectory. Another satellite, positioned just 40 miles away in orbit, was showing nothing. Clean sky, no heat signature, no movement. 2 satellites, same window of sky, completely opposite readings. This is the part that doesn't make it into the history books cleanly. This is the part that gets sanitized later, reframed as a technical malfunction or a sensor error. wrapped up in bureaucratic language so that nobody has to sit with how genuinely close everything came to falling apart. But the people in that room, they knew. They were looking at each other across that table knowing that one of those satellites was lying, and they had maybe 8 minutes left to figure out which one. A military analyst in Brussels was the first to flag the inconsistency out loud. She'd been tracking satellite reliability data for 2 years. She knew that particular sensor had shown calibration issues 3 months earlier. She pulled the maintenance logs in real time, right there in the middle of the briefing, and put them on the screen. The room went quiet. Not the quiet of relief. The quiet of people realizing how many seconds had already passed. Meanwhile, in Washington, a parallel conversation was happening at the highest level. The question on the table wasn't just, is this real? It was, can we afford to assume it isn't? Because that's the brutal logic of nuclear deterrence. Being wrong in one direction means losing everything. Being wrong in the other direction means starting everything. There is no safe answer in that room. There never has been. Back in Moscow, the original officer who had triggered the alert was now being questioned. Not aggressively, not like an interrogation, more like carefully. Every word he'd seen on that screen, every reading, every number, walked back through, slowly, methodically, while the clock kept moving. 12 minutes had passed since the first alert, then 14, then 17, and somewhere around the 19-minute mark, the second satellite data was reanalyzed using a backup ground station in Finland. The trajectory that had looked like a launch? It was a ghost image, a reflection artifact caused by an atmospheric interference pattern that had never been documented before at that altitude. It wasn't a missile. It was light, bounced wrong, read wrong, reported wrong. The alert was canceled. The broadcasts were pulled. Government officials began the careful, delicate process of explaining to hundreds of millions of people across 3 continents that the most terrifying 19 minutes of their lives had been caused by, essentially, a glitch. Except here's what that word glitch doesn't capture. Every single protocol had worked exactly as designed. Every human being in every decision room had followed their training precisely. And the world still came within a single misread data point of an irreversible response. That's not a malfunction. That's the system working perfectly, and still nearly failing completely. So the next time someone tells you nuclear war is unthinkable, that the safeguards are foolproof, that no rational actor would ever push the world to that edge, remember 19 minutes. Remember 2 satellites showing 2 different skies. Remember an analyst pulling maintenance logs while the clock ran down. The first nuclear alert of World War III didn't end with fire. But it showed us exactly how little it would take. If this video made you think, if it made you feel even a fraction of what those people felt in those 19 minutes, then share it. Send it to someone who needs to understand what the world is actually sitting on right now. Drop a comment below telling me what moment hit you hardest. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now because the next story we're covering is just as important, just as real, and just as close to home. Don't look away. The world needs people who are paying attention.